You see, as the oldest sibling, I was always expected to take care of Gigi from the time we were both kids. My parents expected me to pick up after her, help her with her homework, walk with her after school, and play with her because they were too busy with work. Sometimes, even after work, my mother would come back and complain about how she didn't have the energy to spend time with Gigi and would ask me to read her a bedtime story. Gigi also didn't make it any easier on me. She would often say mean things and had trouble understanding social cues. She would say things to people without thinking, which would ultimately land me in trouble. For example, my parents would force me to take Gigi with me if I wanted to go out with my friends for an outing or to their birthday parties. And one time, Gigi came along with me to my best friend's place for her 13th birthday. We had all got her various gifts with our pocket money, which my best friend was very happy to receive. She also opened up a gift that her grandparents had sent her, and it was a Barbie dollhouse. Granted that we were a bit old to still play with Barbie, but clearly my friend loved the gift, and she seemed a bit sentimental over it. Out of nowhere, Gigi started giggling, and when we all turned to look at her, she remarked how it was a dumb gift. I looked back at my friend, alarmed and embarrassed by the way Gigi behaved. My friend looked heartbroken while Gigi kept giggling. I apologized to my best friend and told her that I was going to take Gigi back home. I was so embarrassed for how my sister behaved in front of everyone and was mean to the birthday girl for no reason. When I dragged Gigi back home and asked her why she would do something like that, she only smiled and told me that she said what we were all thinking and it was not her fault if my friend got hurt. I was so pissed and disappointed with her behavior. Later, when I told my parents about it, thinking they might be able to talk to her and let her know what she did was wrong, they instead started to lecture me about being a better sibling. They told me that I should not feel embarrassed about Gigi in front of others, and that I should stop being friends with people who can't handle the truth. I was floored by their reactions. Looking back, I can see how they always gaslighted me in multiple situations just to condition me into accepting my sister and taking care of her while she would get away with doing things like this scot-free. As I kept growing up, I would start to rebel and stand up to my parents when they would force me to take care of Gigi or take her to various events with my friends. I would straight up tell them that Gigi can hang out with her own friends or they can take care of her because I needed my own time. They would accuse me of trying to leave her out of things and not being a good sister to her, since Gigi didn't have any friends. It was true that Gigi didn't have any friends, and this was completely her own fault, as she would say outright mean things to everyone in the name of being honest, and this would ultimately hurt people's feelings. This also led to Gigi sitting in lunch hours alone as no one wanted to sit with her, so my parents would force me to include Gigi on my table, which I absolutely detested. Eventually, after hearing multiple lectures from my parents, I did let Gigi join me and my friends and hang out with us. When I went to college, this is when I experienced true freedom. At first, my parents wanted me to go to a college near my place, but I worked hard and luckily through a scholarship was accepted into a reputed university hundreds of miles away from home. My mother begged me to not go, saying how Gigi would miss me and that I needed to take care of my sister and be a good big sis. But I did not care a dime. I moved out of their home into my dorm and never looked back. I was so happy to be away from my family that even during vacations or long weekends I never went back home. It was like I could breathe again for the first time, and I didn't want to go back to the suffocation back at my home. Now, I was part of a Facebook group with my friends from school, and I had also added Gigi to the group since she would hang out with us. In this group, Gigi would sometimes message and ask if anybody would like to hang out with her, but not a single person would reply back to her. Granted that some of my friends, like me, had moved miles away for college, but I knew a few who were still living in the same hometown, yet they were not interested in hanging out with her. I knew that my friends only hung out with Gigi since I was forced by my parents to take her with me, but now that I was not there, they had no reason to hang out with her. I didn't blame them, since Gigi never stopped being mean with her comments towards them, so I respected their decisions whatsoever. Yet Gigi would keep asking people in the group to hang out with her. I also heard from some of them that Gigi would try to call them directly to see if they wanted to hang out with her, but they would either make up some excuses or ignore her calls. Meanwhile, Gigi and I hardly talked. She and I had always been forced to be together, and I suspect she didn't like me as much as I didn't enjoy her company either. So now that I was away from home, we hardly ever messaged each other. My parents would sometimes call to give me updates about her life and tell me how I should try to visit them soon and spend time with Gigi, but I paid no heed to them. During my final year of college, I had gone back home since we're all having a school reunion. I was quite excited to see my old friends again and hang out with everyone. When Gigi learned about this, she insisted that she wanted to join me as well, since she wanted to hang out with my friends, but this time I sternly told her that these were my friends who I had spent my school days with, and she had no right to intrude in this event. My parents tried to argue with me, but I quickly shut them down. I informed them that Gigi needed to have her own friends and her own life without forcing me to take her everywhere, since we were not kids anymore. I thought this would be the end of this matter. During the reunion, I found myself immersed in a wave of nostalgia and laughter as we all shared stories and caught up with each other. We reminisced about our school pranks and inside jokes. I was having such a good time with everyone. As my friends and I sat down for lunch during the reunion, out of nowhere, Gigi walked into the restaurant uninvited. I was shocked and frustrated to see her, as I had clearly told her to stop interfering in my life. But here she was. Gigi approached our table, and before I could say anything, she loudly declared, "Oh, I missed you guys." The awkward silence that followed was palpable. Everyone looked confused between me and her, since they didn't expect her to show up. Gigi, oblivious to the discomfort, pulled up a chair and started talking about how long it had been since she had seen everyone. I was pissed seeing the nerve my sister had to talk to my friends right in front of me at an event where she was not even invited. My friends, trying to be polite, made small talk with her. I could see from everybody's faces how uncomfortable they all felt, and we could not talk freely. After we had lunch, I took Gigi aside and asked her to go back home. But she dismissed me, saying that this wasn't a big deal and that I should get over myself because these were her friends also. She was starting to get on my nerves with her nonchalant attitude, and I was slowly seeing red, so I decided to teach her a lesson. I took her back to my friends and decided to address the situation publicly to them in order to get their opinions, so once and for all, Gigi understood how embarrassing her behavior was. I asked them if anybody felt it appropriate that little sister had come uninvited to our reunion. To my relief, some of my friends echoed my sentiments and told Gigi that they did feel uncomfortable with her since they were not close to her. My school best friend, then trying to smooth the matter, told Gigi that they could hang out with her some other day, but not for today. But for today, they would like it if it was just the old classmates hanging out. Gigi looked embarrassed hearing their reactions, and I couldn't help but feel satisfied watching her learn a valuable lesson about boundaries. She shot me an angry glance, clearly blaming me for this fiasco, and somberly walked out. That night, after I returned home from the after-party of my reunion, my parents confronted me about what happened and told me how I embarrassed Gigi in front of everyone by kicking her out. I explained to them how no one wanted her there, and she had barged into our reunion uninvited, so she needed to apologize to me. But my parents started insisting that she is my sister and I need to be more understanding. My mother told me how Gigi always finds it difficult to make friends, and no one wants to hang out with her, so she was excited to meet my friends knowing that they had always been sweet to her. I retorted back how I had been understanding about Gigi for years, but these people were only nice to her because I was their friend, and they clearly didn't want to be around her otherwise. Gigi, who had perhaps been hearing our argument, barged into the room saying how everyone liked her, and it was me who was trying to take her friends away from her. I started laughing hearing this and told her that if that was the case, then why didn't a single friend of mine hang out with her for all these years whenever she would message in our group chat or even call them? Gigi looked at me hurt and started justifying how everyone was just busy and it didn't mean anything, but I retorted back that everyone was just busy hanging out with her because they were not her friends. I know this might have been a mean thing to say, but I wanted Gigi to know the truth. My dad started saying how I was being selfish and I should apologize to Gigi for what I said, but I remained steadfast that it was Gigi who had crossed a boundary by barging into our reunion when no one wanted her there, and it was time she needed to face the consequences of her own actions. This was the last straw that broke my and Gigi's relationship completely. Since then, we never spoke to each other, nor did we even try to be nice to each other whenever we met over the holidays. Years later, when I was getting married, my parents forced me to invite her, saying how bad Gigi would feel about not getting invited, and that they didn't want the rest of the family to know that there was any bad blood between us. I reluctantly invited her as a guest, and my parents wanted me to make her my bridesmaid, but I put my foot down and threatened that I would uninvite her if they kept pushing me. Fortunately, I have a loving and supporting partner like my husband Kyle, who understood the dynamics of the relationship between me and my sister and never questioned why I didn't want to involve her more in our wedding. Over the years, I have been polite to Gigi, but never bonded with her beyond that. Now, coming on to the incident at hand, Gigi just married a week ago. Her husband, Rick, is 15 years older than her, whom she met while working at a restaurant. Gigi could never hold on to a job for very long and had always talked to my parents about getting married, so Rick was her knight in shining armor. She was ecstatic about finally settling down. When she sent out her marriage invitations, I found out from my cousins and parents, it was not surprising that I didn't receive any. I honestly didn't care, since she and I didn't have a good relationship anyway. However, to my surprise, Gigi sent out a virtual invitation to all my friends on the very same Facebook group where I had added her years ago. I had kind of forgotten about the group since no one uses Facebook anymore, and was kind of taken aback that she would invite my friends to her wedding when none of them even spoke to her. Some of these friends did reach out to me to ask if I would be attending as well, and I told them how Gigi never invited me, which shocked them that she would invite them. I told them that I didn't really mind if they chose to attend, since I had no relationship with her whatsoever. I guess this news must have spread like wildfire among my friends, because a bunch of them messaged me saying how rude it was for my sister to invite them, as they were almost strangers to her now, but not invite me when I used to take care of her and look out for her while we were growing up. I tried to make it clear that I was okay with her decision to not invite me, but because Gigi had publicly invited every one of my friends in the group and not me, it seemed to my friends like she had deliberately chosen to exclude me. I did have a talk with my parents regarding this, and I reminded them how they had forced me to invite her to my wedding in the name of a family, but my mother started justifying how this was Gigi's decision on the guest list and they didn't have a say in this. Feeling betrayed, I told them how she had invited all my friends, which had led everyone to question why she would deliberately single me out, but my parents, as usual, stuck by her side and told me that those were her friends also, and Gigi would love it if they attended her wedding. I saw that there was no point in talking to my family, so I didn't bring up this conversation again. Last week, on the day my sister got married, I spent the day with my husband and my son. Kyle knew that I was a bit upset, so he took us out to the beach and we had a good time. I switched off my phone since I like having tech-free days while spending time with my loved ones. When I returned home, I was flooded with multiple messages and voice calls from my sister and my parents. Confused and unable to comprehend what was happening, I opened the last message from Gigi, which had a picture attached. She had written how this was all my fault and that she would never forgive me for spoiling her day. The picture attached was of some of my friends, and I gasped looking at the picture. My friends were wearing floor-length multicolored gowns which looked absolutely ridiculous. One of them was even wearing a fancy boa draped around her neck, while another had on a summer hat. I could not understand why anyone would ever wear these types of dresses to attend a wedding. It definitely looked less like a wedding and more like a fancy dress competition, and I couldn't help but chuckle at how ridiculous they all looked. My sister then called me, clearly trying to reach me throughout the day, and when I picked up, she started screaming at how selfish I was for ruining her wedding. I tried to calm her down, saying that I had no idea why my friends would dress up like that, and she kept blaming me, saying that I was just jealous of her and knowingly had asked them to dress up like that, which had turned her wedding into a laughing show. I kind of felt bad for her, but I just couldn't understand why she would blame me even though I had nothing to do with this. My parents have also messaged me saying how disappointed they are in me and I should have stopped my friends from dressing up like that, which is absolutely preposterous. I don't know if I should clarify the matter or let them keep blaming me. I have started to think my friends might have turned up like that since they all knew that my sister didn't invite me, and I kind of feel like this is a bit of my fault. I feel like I should have clarified the matter better to them. AITA for my friends turning my sister's wedding into a fancy dress competition. Update 1. I talked to Kyle and we both felt that I should clear the matter with my family, but first I needed to reach out to my friends for an explanation. By now, images from Gigi's wedding have flooded social media and a lot of people have found out about this incident. I gathered my friends through a video call and asked them about their choice of dressing. To my surprise, my friends straight up revealed that they had decided to dress up as a way of subtly protesting against Gigi's habit of inserting herself into situations. Without a specific dress code mentioned in the invitation, they took the opportunity to make a statement. They confessed that over the years they grew tired of Gigi's persistent attempts to be part of our group, and she would sometimes even badmouth me behind my back, which they clearly didn't like. Despite understanding that I was often compelled by my parents to include Gigi, they held on to the hope that she would eventually realize their boundaries. But she never did. Gigi's intruding into our reunion reminded them of how annoying she had always been. When they discovered that Gigi had deliberately excluded me from the wedding invitation, they decided it was the perfect moment to teach her a lesson. It became evident that my friends saw through Gigi's actions and had always regarded her as more of a nuisance than a genuine friend. Their unconventional fancy dresses to her wedding were their way of expressing their frustration and delivering a subtle message to Gigi that they were not her friends. When I shared the details of Gigi blaming me for the wedding fiasco, my friends were genuinely apologetic. They immediately offered to send her a group text affirming that the idea was entirely their own, absolving me of any involvement. Grateful for their support, I assured them that I didn't hold them responsible for the unexpected turn of events at Gigi's wedding. While their choice of attire might have seemed unconventional, I understood the frustration that fueled their actions. I told them that my primary concern was ensuring that Gigi and my parents grasped the message they were trying to convey about respecting boundaries, and that I shouldn't be blamed for this. Since our talk, my friends have sent an apology to Gigi in our Facebook group, telling her how it was their idea to dress up that way, and I had no idea about all this. I know Gigi has seen that message because instead of replying back to them, she called me and started going off about how I was just trying to escape responsibility, and clearly I was manipulating my friends. She told me how her wedding had become the laughing stock in the family, and how those ridiculous pictures are circulating on social media as well. I understood her frustration, so I told her as politely as possible that she couldn't blame me for what my friends wore to her wedding when I wasn't even invited to her wedding in the first place. I told her that even though my friends have outright admitted that I wasn't involved in their planning and she still chose to not believe me, then I couldn't do much about it. I reiterated that I had no intention of sabotaging her wedding day and that my friends were merely expressing their frustration with her intrusive behavior over the years. Despite my explanation, it became evident that Gigi was unwilling to accept any explanation that didn't align with her belief. So I quickly wrapped up the phone call. My husband believes that my parents can help sort this out, but I don't think they will be able to until Gigi believes the truth. I don't know if they will be of any help, but I will talk to them this coming weekend and see if they can straighten this out. Update 2. Hi everyone. It's been a week since my last update. As expected by everyone, talking to my parents didn't really help the situation in any way. It worsened the situation even more if possible. As I explained the situation, I was met with unexpected blame. They argued that I should have controlled my friends, implying that the unconventional attire was somehow my responsibility. My attempt to clarify that I had no knowledge of my friend's plan fell on deaf ears. My parents, as usual, sided with Gigi, expressing disappointment and suggesting that I should have warned Gigi about my friends. I looked at them confused and told them how I wasn't even part of their discussions and they had done all this without my knowledge. But my parents, like Gigi, refused to believe that. Feeling frustrated and misunderstood, I realized that resolving the issue with my family might be more challenging than I initially thought. The strained relationship between Gigi and me, coupled with my parents' persistent bias towards her, seemed to cloud any hope of a fair resolution. Kyle, who had come with me for this discussion, decided to stand up for me and told my parents straight to their faces that I wasn't the sort of person who could stab someone in the back like that, especially my own sister. He said that on the day of Gigi's wedding, we were away since we had not been invited and we had no idea about such a thing even happening. He explained that it was unfair for my family to place blame on me without any evidence. My mother protested, saying how I might have instigated my friends to dress up that way when I told everyone that I wasn't invited, but Kyle replied back that I had mentioned to my friends that I was okay with not being invited, so what they chose to do was not on us. I could see that my parents were not going to back down, so I told them that if they didn't want to believe me, then there was no point in having this conversation further. I also told them that for years I had listened to them and taken care of Gigi, but now I was done being their scapegoat. I told them of my decision to cut Gigi off from my life permanently, and my mother started to protest, but my father held her back. With that, we decided to leave my parents' place to distance ourselves from the situation, hoping that when their emotions would subside, they would subsequently see the truth. Unfortunately, they haven't reached out to me yet, so I guess they're going to stick by their beliefs. It's sad to see how they clearly favor my sister over me, even though I was the one who always helped her out. I don't know what the future holds for us. But if my parents are choosing to support my sister, then I will let them make that choice, even if it's disappointing. I have blocked Gigi for now and plan on keeping it that way in the future. Update 3. Wow, it's been 5 months since my last update. A lot has happened since my last post. First of all, I have been going to therapy. I know a lot of you guys suggested this since I have had a lot of trauma in my childhood and I needed to go to therapy and vent out my frustration and feelings. Therapy has changed my life. I feel so much lighter now. I know exactly how to express myself now, and I know that I did the right thing by standing up for myself in regards to Gigi's wedding incident. My parents did sometimes try to reach out to me over the months, but instead of clarifying or even apologizing to me for all the blaming that they did, they acted like nothing ever happened between us. I quickly realized that they only wanted to talk to me so they could have a connection with my son, their only grandchild. So I quickly cut them off. I don't want them to ever get the opportunity to treat my child the same way they treated me. In the meantime, Kyle and I have focused on our own lives, finding solace in the support we provide each other. I have said this before and I will say it again. Kyle is a wonderful husband. He knows how tough a decision it was for me to cut off my parents, but he has never made me feel alone in this choice. We are planning on taking a vacation with our son this upcoming holiday. All I can say from this incident is that if you have a family member in your life who is this toxic, then please, for your own mental health, remove them from your life. It's not worth letting them poison your life. Trust me. You are going to find someone someday who is going to love you and support you for who you are. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.